Hongjo is an overlooked civil servant grinding away in an office that never notices her. However, when she uses magic to rizz up a top colleague, she messes up the spell and accidentally makes a hot lawyer fall for her. Before all this mess, Hongjo was sent out one day to handle a noise complaint. The complaint had been made by nearby residents concerning a construction site in the area. Getting to the venue, she tries to resolve the whole issue, but when she tells the residents that the noise levels are within legal limits and so the construction can continue, they erupt in anger. In a matter of seconds, the angry residents start throwing hands at the construction workers, putting Hongjo in the middle of the squabble. While trying to deal with the angry crowd, a construction worker has a tragic accident right in front of everyone. He falls from the building, and a metallic object pierces him fatally, unaliving him in an instant. The whole incident then puts a spotlight on the job Hongjo had just defended as safe. 6 months later, a rich, handsome lawyer named Shinyu reviews the case from his office, trying to figure out the cause of the accident. While he looks at pictures from the accident site, something sinister happens as a mysterious red hand appears and starts to caress his skin. Calmly, Shinyu tells the red hand he can't have fun with it, as he will be needing his energy for a court case the following day. The hand then disperses, hinting that this is not the first time they're getting involved. The following day in court, Shinyu takes the legal position to defend Hyunseo, his client, who owns the building being constructed. While the prosecutor tries to paint the construction site as unsafe, Shinyu dominates the proceedings by displaying things through a different lens. He dismantles the argument that the worker's death was due to negligent construction, instead showing how the worker staged the accident in a desperate bid to get compensation. Through clever questioning and evidence, he even gets the worker's wife to confess to convincing her husband to plan the stunt to get money for their child's cancer treatment. The man had intentionally worn thicker clothes and fallen from the 4th floor so he'd only end up injured, but due to slight miscalculations, he ended up escaping from reality. The case then ends with Shinyu's client winning, and applause fills the room. To celebrate, Hyunseo invites him and his coworkers out for drinks. But the celebration quickly veers into chaos as Hyunseo starts harassing a female employee. While a male colleague tries to step in to defend her, Hyunseo gets violent and starts sliming him hard. Shinyu then steps in, calmly warning him about security cameras, which could ruin his reputation, forcing Hyunseo to behave appropriately. Until he's alone, trying to pour a drink for an older relative, and his hands begin to tremble uncontrollably. He lies about it, masking his fear, but the glimpse we get is that something much darker is at play than a simple medical condition. Meanwhile, Hongjo, who had been transferred to a different branch, gets transferred back to the city hall. That night, all she can think about is how badly Gong, her new boss, would treat her when she resumes. On the other side of town, a young streamer visits an old shrine on top of Mount Onju. Although the locals have claimed that the shrine is cursed, the youngster sees it as an avenue to boost his channel. When he gets to the shrine and starts recording, he feels the presence of some dark forces, so he decides to leave immediately. On his way out, he trips and falls into the shrine's ruins, losing his life instantly, terrorizing all his followers. The following morning, while Hongjo resumes at the city hall, she meets her new boss and colleagues, who treat her really badly and make her stay behind while they go out for lunch. Later, while she finally has lunch that day, she sees Jae-gyong, a fine gentleman in their company, whom she later finds out is pretty rich and influential in the city as well. She then develops feelings for him on the spot. The following day, due to complaints from agitated residents about the streamer's death, the Department of Greenery is pressured to demolish the shrine. Given that the shrine isn't government-owned, Gong orders Hongjo to find the owner to get their approval for demolition. When she gets to the shrine, she hears a voice welcoming her for finally coming. Startled, she looks around to confirm if anyone else happened to be in the shrine as well. She then catches a glimpse of a man and loses consciousness, collapsing on the ground immediately. Meanwhile, Shinyu, who had been in the shrine as well, decides to check up on her. When she wakes up, she's startled to see a very attractive stranger standing in front of her. At this moment, Hongjo, half-dazed, thinks he's some sort of grim reaper who has come to collect her soul. She then asks him to at least take her out on a date before taking her to the afterlife, but Shinyu wasn't there to save her. He just happened to come by, also investigating the shrine, as it turns out his family actually owns the land. Moments later, Hongjo is woken up by one of her colleagues, who had come to pick her up from the shrine. A few days later, Shinyu attends a family burial ceremony where he meets some elders. While he tries to pour one of them a drink, his right hand begins to shake rigorously for some reason. When they ask about it, he downplays it immediately, calling it a popular trick used to make liquor taste better. He then sees a doctor after the ceremony, who identifies the phenomenon as a terrible hereditary disease that would eventually get worse over time. Hongjo pushes forward in her task, now determined to find the owner of the shrine. After asking around to a group of locals, she's able to get the office address of the owner. On getting there, she's shocked to see Shinyu, the same man she had mistaken for a Grim Reaper. Still, she carries out her duty and tries to use the murder case to convince him to demolish the shrine. But Shinyu, being a top lawyer in the game, dismisses her logic with legal claims. He even threatens to sue them for trespassing on his property without permission. He teases her about taking her on a date before collecting her soul, causing her to storm out of his office in embarrassment. Getting back to the office, she sees Jae-gyong arriving at the same time. She notices one of the angry protesters trying to drop Jae-gyong's aura points by wetting his clothes, so she immediately becomes his meat shield before running away in embarrassment. The following day, due to the amount of pressure Hongjo is under from her team members, she meets up with a group of locals to ask about the shaman of the shrine. Apparently, Shinyu had told her that even if the shrine was to be demolished, she'd have to get the approval of the shaman first. After asking around, she learns that the shaman has been taken to a nursing home known only to Shinyu's family. Reluctantly, she then heads back, realizing that she's going to have to meet up with Shinyu one more time. When she meets up with him, she asks him for the address of the hospital, but Shinyu refuses to give it to her. Instead, he asks why she's so determined to demolish the shrine like her job depends on it. Hongjo then tells him that she believes that if she can complete this case, then her boss and colleagues will start treating her better. Touched, Shinyu gives her the address, although he sees it as a waste of time, as he believes the shaman wouldn't agree to the demolition. When Hongjo meets up with the shaman, she surprisingly gives her the permission needed. Confused, Shinyu meets up with the shaman later, but she tells him about the curse of the Red Hand, as well as the evil thing he did in his past life to incur such a curse. She then tells him that Hongjo might be able to help him lift the curse, as she is the owner of an old wooden box that's tied to all the shrine's mysteries. After the demolition, Shinyu finally finds this same wooden box buried under the shrine, so he picks it up, intending to hand it over to Hongjo. Later, Hongjo returns to City Hall, hopeful that she's accomplished the task and that her team will finally include her in something. Instead, she discovers that her coworkers went to celebrate her success without her. Seeing them laughing and having dinner while leaving her behind hits her hard. She breaks down and cries in the street, genuinely overwhelmed by loneliness and rejection. Shinyu then confronts her, asking her to come with him. Shinyu takes Hongjo to his car, where he hands her the box, telling her it belongs to her. Confused, Hongjo refuses it blatantly, but when Shinyu mentions that it's from the shaman, she accepts it. Shinyu then offers to give her a ride back home, but she rejects his offer, claiming that she doesn't accept rides from people she's not close to. He then asks her to call him when she opens the box, as they both leave. When Hongjo gets back home, she uses every means possible to open the box, but it's all to no avail. Frustrated, she picks up a hammer and tries to smash the lock, but something strange happens as the power in the room goes out. Later that night, after waiting tirelessly for her call, Shinyu calls Hongjo to ask about the progress with the box. She then tells him about how rigid the lock is, making it practically impossible to open. The following day, Jae-gyong meets up with the mayor to discuss an idea. Due to the amount of money civil servants from the city hall have been spending on lawsuits, he suggests that it's better they hire a competent lawyer to stand in as their legal advisor. Although the mayor sees it as a good idea, he doesn't believe anyone would be willing to accept the job, as the pay seems quite low. That afternoon, Shinyu calls Hongjo during lunchtime at work, asking her not to work overtime so she can get home quickly and open the box. Later that day, Jae-gyong meets up with Shinyu, whom he believes would be the right person for the job. To his surprise, Shinyu turns down the offer, claiming that he doesn't want a job that doesn't seem motivating. That evening, when Hongjo gets home, she makes a video call to Shinyu and mocks him by attempting all the magic tricks she knows in an attempt to open the box. After her dramatic display, she then tells him to stop bothering her, as she has tried everything within her power to open the box. The following day, at the law firm where Shinyu works, Hyeonseo, who made a fuss the other day, shows up to apologize for his unruly behavior. As a token of his apology, he buys expensive watches for the entire board of directors. But for some reason, Shinyu doesn't seem fazed by Hyeonseo's gestures. When Hyeonseo confronts him, expecting him to feel intimidated, he resigns from the company on the spot and walks out. That evening, when Hongjo gets home, she puts on some music and starts dancing like she's auditioning for an open spot in Blackpink. After dancing for a while, she realizes that she still hasn't fixed the bulb that stopped working the other day in her room. She then grabs a chair and tries to replace the bulb. In the process, she slips and falls, breaking the ballast. Frustrated, she sits helplessly on the floor, hoping for someone to come save her. Suddenly, the lock on the box opens. Excited, Hongjo checks it to see what lies beneath. When she opens the box, she sees a book titled Spells of the Heavens. Reading through, she discovers that not only was the book written by a shaman named Hongjo, but it also contains a series of spells that seem unrealistic. While looking through the random spells, she finds a love spell, which she uses to fantasize about a happy life with Jae-gyong. The following morning at work, Hongjo runs into Shinyu, who asks if she has made any progress. Annoyed, she tells him about the book, which she finds rather useless. Hearing about the book, Shinyu gets more interested and asks her to elaborate. While she elaborates, Jae-gyong shows up, causing Hongjo to start blushing like a 12-year-old. Cringing, Shinyu interrupts the moment by telling her about the fact that he now works in the city hall as well. Later that day, Hongjo finds out that Jae-gyong had publicly complimented her on the city hall's message board. Seeing her excitement, her colleagues get openly jealous as they tell her not to get full of herself. When Shinyu gets settled in his new office, he does some research on his computer where he finds out that Hongjo was actually a real shaman. After work, he persuades Hongjo to show him the book, so she agrees to let him drive her home. When they get close enough, she instructs him to park and wait in the car while she heads in to bring the book. But on her way, she gets harassed by a homeless man. She is then saved by Shinyu, who had followed her. When they get to her apartment, she tries to make him wait outside, but changes her mind when she remembers the light. When they head in, Hongjo tells Shinyu she'll only let him read the book if he fixes the light, but while he tries to fix it, his condition kicks in again as his right hand begins to shake. Although Shinyu is unable to fix the lights, she still shows him the book. Going through the contents, Shinyu stumbles on a spell for curing diseases. His face then brightens up as Hongjo snatches the book from him. Before he leaves, he asks her to do him a favor, as he would only need a spell from the book. The following day, Hongjo runs into Nayeon, the mayor's daughter, who also happens to be Shinyu's girlfriend. Nayeon was her classmate and only friend back in high school, who had cut her off and made her life miserable because the boy they both liked chose her. Nayeon tries to apologize for the past, but Hongjo doesn't seem ready to forgive her. Shinyu then shows up out of nowhere and points out to Hongjo that the reason she's always alone is that she doesn't let people into her space. Later at work that day, a scandal about a celebrity's affair gets posted online, so Hongjo's team members agree to meet up after work to discuss it. Remembering Shinyu's words to her, Hongjo decides to tag along with the team. When she gets to the restaurant they had gone to, they don't seem quite welcome at first, but she apologizes sincerely for whatever she did to make them hate her. So they're left with no choice but to let her join them. Shortly after, Jae-gyong, Shinyu, and some other high-ranking colleagues join them at the restaurant. Hongjo's colleagues then use the opportunity to ask Jae-gyong if he was the one who posted the review about Hongjo. To their surprise, he reveals that he has been noticing her diligence at work, so he decided to post it. Hearing this, her colleagues get even more jealous. After dinner, Jae-gyong gives Hongjo a gift, and she mistakes it for a love confession. She then confesses her feelings for him on the spot. Rather than the response she was expecting, Jae-gyong turns her down, telling her he is only trying to repay the kindness she showed him the other day. After Jae-gyong leaves, Shinyu, who has been there the whole time, confronts her, but she bursts out and leaves immediately. The following morning at work, rumors spread about the rejection as someone had captured the moment and made an article about it. Hongjo confronts Shinyu about it, but he proves his innocence. When she gets back home that evening, she finds a package that had been sent to her from a farm by the landlady. When she goes through the package, she finds out that it coincidentally contains the ingredients she needs for the love spell. She then follows the procedure and begins to cast the spell. Meanwhile, Shinyu, who is driving home from work, gets into another episode with the red hand and almost gets into a severe accident. After the minor accident, Shinyu meets up with Nayeon in a bar. When he mentions the accident, she gets worried and asks him to go to a hospital for a checkup, but he downplays her worries, telling her he's completely fine. He then tells her he will be needing space to figure some things out, making her worried. Meanwhile, when Hongjo completes the spell, she pours it into a container, as instructed, determined to get Jae-gyong to drink it. The following day, just before a conference meeting, Hongjo sneaks into the hall and swaps Jae-kyung's water with her love potion. She then watches from outside to see if he'll drink it. At some point, he almost drinks it, but Hongjo gets interrupted by a call from Gong, so she's unable to find out. Getting back to the office, Gong tells her about the flower baskets planted by the city hall staff by the roadside, which were found shattered. Apparently, Shinyu had crashed into them during his minor crisis the previous night. When she finds out about it, Hongjo goes into a rage, reporting to Shinyu's office immediately. Arriving at his office, she demands that he sue whoever is responsible as their legal advisor. When Shinyu reveals that he was the one who caused the accident, she lashes out at him rather than asking if he's okay. Shinyu then offers her to come with him on a trip, taking her completely by surprise. He reveals that he wants to use the spell she promised him, and that she has to come along as the caster. Hongjo tries to turn down the offer at first, but he convinces her that it would be a great way to take a break from the hectic workload her team members are always putting on her. When she requests a day off from Gong, to her surprise, he agrees to it. Later, when they take off to the designated location, all Hongjo can think about is the fact that she believes Jae-kyung drank the potion. Shinyu, on the other hand, has started to feel a strange sense of attraction to Hongjo. Shortly after she falls asleep, he adjusts her neck and even shields her from the sun for the rest of the journey. Back at the city hall, Jae-kyung discovers the circulating video of how he rejected Hongjo. He immediately calls her desk, but since she's not around, her colleagues answer the call for her. He then schedules a brief meeting with them where he scolds them rigorously for filming and spreading such a clip in the office. He also makes them take it down immediately before taking his leave. After a while, Shinyu and Hongjo arrive at an expensive villa. When Hongjo finds out that the villa belongs to Shinyu, she tries to convince him to grill pork belly, but Shinyu has other plans. He tells her to get ready, as they'll be climbing the mountain soon in search of the final ingredient for his spell. When he mentions the ingredient, Hongjo realizes that it's for the cure disease spell. Confused, she asks why someone as wealthy as he is out here searching for ingredients for a spell rather than taking effective medication. He then explains to her that what he's battling with isn't just a normal disease, but a curse. She still doesn't believe him, but they continue their search either way. Eventually, Hongjo finds the plant, growing on a rock, but when she tries to pluck it, her short hands don't reach it. Shinyu then pulls up like Superman and assists her with it in typical K-drama fashion. Later that evening, they both dressed appropriately for the spell, settling down directly under the moonlight. When Hongjo begins the process, Shinyu gazes at her in awe as she combines the ingredients like a professional. After the process, Shinyu feels a lot better, but he hides it from Hongjo by lying that the condition hasn't gotten any better. That night, for the first time in forever, Shinyu sleeps peacefully. He even dreams about memories from his past life. The following morning, Shinyu continues his act, this time telling her he feels far worse. Still, she tries to convince him to give it a little time and that he should feel changes gradually. Shortly after, Shinyu calls off the trip and decides that they should head back. While Hongjo reluctantly packs her load back into the car, she receives a call from Jae-kyung, who checks up on her to see how she's doing. After confirming that she'll be back in the city the following day, he asks her out to dinner. Hearing this, Hongjo gets flustered, as she believes her love potion worked and that Jae-kyung probably wants to meet up to confess his feelings. She then tells Shinyu to be patient and that the effect of the spell should kick in soon. On the drive back, Shinyu can't help but notice how excited Hongjo is for her date with Jae-kyung. When they arrive, and Shinyu drops Hongjo off, she seems reluctant to take an expensive dress that he bought her, but he insists that she take it. When he arrives back home, Shinyu realizes that he has a new problem now. Now that the red hand predicament is gone, his new curse is that he can't stop thinking about Hongjo no matter how hard he tries. Later at work, when Hongjo tries to find her tumbler, which holds the remnants of the love potion, she realizes that Gong has drunk it. Things then change completely, as someone who used to hate her starts smiling a lot around her. Shortly after, she meets the manager Yoon-young, who had been absent from work all this time due to personal reasons. When Shinyu gets home from work, he meets Naeon waiting for him outside his new apartment. She had come with her stuff, hoping to start living together with him, but things get ugly quickly as Shinyu breaks up with her without hesitation. She then packs her stuff and leaves his apartment in tears. The following day at work, Hongjo's colleagues notice Gong's unusual attitude towards Hongjo, so they assume the old man is starting to go crazy. That evening, Hongjo excitedly meets up with Jaegyong at the selected restaurant, but Shinyu intends to interrupt them. He then gets a hunch about something midway. He immediately heads back to the office and requests surveillance footage from the conference meeting. Looking at the surveillance footage, he then realizes what happened. During the meeting in which he sat next to Jaegyong, he had mistakenly drunk from Jaegyong's cup, explaining the feelings he had suddenly developed for Hongjo. When Hongjo arrives back home from the date, she meets Shinyu, who tells her he knows Jaegyong likes her. He then takes her by surprise by confessing his feelings for her on the spot. While Hongjo stands there flustered, Shinyu shows her the video footage of him drinking the potion. Rather than getting excited, Hongjo blames him because she worked hard to make the potion for Jaegyong and not him. She then asks him if the cure disease spell worked as well, but Shinyu still decides to play obliviously. Before he leaves, he asks her to find a cure for the spell, as he doesn't have time to waste, falling in love with her. Later that night, Hongjo wonders to herself if Jaegyong actually likes her, as Shinyu claimed. Her date with him had gone way differently than she had anticipated, as Jaegyong had told her it would be better if she found someone else and didn't waste her feelings on him. At work the following morning, Shinyu can't seem to focus on his tasks, so he decides to do something dynamic for Hongjo. Meanwhile, Hongjo's team holds a meeting with Yoon-young, the manager, where she reviews their tasks. During the meeting, Yoon-young realizes that the workload assigned to Hongjo in the past few weeks seemed to be a lot more than the others. She then tries to find out if she was being bullied, but Hongjo downplays it, to not getting into an awkward position. Suddenly, Shinyu shows up with coffee for the whole team. He then confesses that he was the one responsible for damaging the flower baskets by the roadside, stating that they shouldn't bully Hongjo like they used to. Hearing that, Yoon-young confirms her suspicions, so she scolds the rest of the team seriously. Hongjo later meets up with Shinyu discreetly and blames him for intervening in her affairs. Rather than feeling guilty, Shinyu confesses his love for her even further, telling her about how he had ended his 2-year relationship with Naeon just to be with his little Pookie bear. Cringed out, Hongjo suggests that he drink a lot of water so he can probably flush out the potion from his system, and he equally sees it as a good idea. Meanwhile, Shinyu's father meets up with Naeon and apologizes for his son's action, likening it to his hereditary disease. He then asks a favor from her, requesting that she stay by his side until the end. Later that day at work, while Hongjo tries to help a delivery man move some boxes, Shinyu shows up out of the blue to assist her. Hongjo asks why he's still bothering her, and he reveals that he has gone to the bathroom over 30 times but still feels the same. During their squabble, Naeon arrives at the office and sees them together. When Hongjo arrives back home that evening, she meets the landlady, who tells her she'll be selling the apartment downstairs to a new tenant. Over dinner, when Hongjo tells her about her love squabble at work, the old lady tells her it'd be better to date the man who likes her, rather than the one she's not sure about. Meanwhile, while Shinyu goes to bed that night, he dreams about a particular young girl dressed in some old apparel. Early the following morning, while Hongjo and some other civil servants tend to some plants out in the woods, the florist they work with ends up drinking the remnant of the love potion from her tumbler. He then starts to act differently towards her. The following day at work, things get a lot better for Hongjo as her colleagues treat her way better than they used to, thanks to Yoon-young. On her way home that night, Hongjo runs into a stalker, but she's once again rescued by Shinyu. Shinyu then notices the wallpaper on her phone for the first time, and it happens to be her childhood picture, which looks exactly like the young girl he saw in his dream. Rather than freaking out, he turns the whole situation into his riz, spewing lines about how they've always been fated to be together. Frustrated, Hongjo decides to take him to the shaman to find out if there's any way to break the spell. When they get there, the shaman requests a private session with each of them, where she tells Shinyu that the only one with the power to break the spell is Hongjo. She then tells Hongjo the only way she can break the spell. On their way back, Shinyu tries to find out what the shaman told Hongjo, but for some reason, she refuses to tell him. He then notices her face looking moody, so he tells her not to frown like that, as it would ruin the prettiest face in the world. In that moment, Hongjo blushes like crazy, and no matter how hard she tries to hide it, her subtitled face gives her away. After a bit of struggle, Hongjo then agrees to let Shinyu drop her off back home. When he gets back home, he gets so restless that he calls the shaman to tell him what she told Hongjo. As expected, she tells him one more time that all his answers lie in the hands of Hongjo. The following day at work, Hongjo gets a series of calls and complaints from angry citizens for a mistake they made, but Eun-young keeps things under control. A few moments later, she gets a call from an individual complaining about some withered flowers outside the building. When she gets there, she meets no one other than Shinyu, who tells her the real withered flowers are the ones in his heart because he hasn't seen her all day. Frustrated, Hongjo tries to leave, but Shinyu persuades her, trying to find out what the shaman told her. She then runs away. That evening, Shinyu video calls Hongjo and tries to get her to at least give him hints on what the shaman said. She then gives him the acronym YDCBSAI, telling him to figure out the rest on his own. Shinyu tries brainstorming with his parents, but still can't figure out what the acronyms stand for, causing him to feel frustrated. Moreover, Hongjo finally meets her new downstairs neighbor, and it turns out to be someone other than Jaegyong. She then runs up to her room, convinced that fate definitely wants them to be together. The following morning, when she steps out of the compound, she meets Shinyu parked right in front of her. He tries to find out what the acronym stands for, but she ignores him, telling him she's going on a date. Hongjo then gets in a bus, but Shinyu ends up tagging along. Throughout the trip, Shinyu remains restless, trying to find out who her date is, but Hongjo simply asks him to stop bothering her. They eventually get to a beach where Hongjo settles down and pours some drinks into the sea to pay respect to her long-lost father. It is at that moment that Shinyu realizes what the acronym stands for: your destinies cannot be severed, accept it. That evening, Hongjo heads to a diner to eat, and Shinyu follows her because he recalls her once saying she doesn't like to eat alone. When he sits opposite her, she makes him stand up, as the seat is reserved for her father. The main reason she had gone on the date was to honor her father, who passed away years ago on that day. Hearing this, Shinyu immediately leaves the seat and sits next to her. When they place an order and start eating, Hongjo notices that Shinyu doesn't seem to be drinking. Asking about it, she realizes that due to his health conditions, he has never once had alcohol. Shinyu asks how her father passed away, but Hongjo refuses to tell him about it, as she believes they're not that close yet. After dinner, Hongjo, who is now drunk, runs back to the beach, yelling out facts about her life to her father. She also mentions the fact that, rather than coming with a boyfriend, a random guy escorted her to see him. Shinyu joins to say some words, but rather than introducing himself as the random guy, he introduces himself as her destiny. He then reveals to Hongjo that he finally understands what the acronym stands for. Seeing how she doesn't contradict the meaning he provides, he confirms it to be correct. He then begins to tease her about the fact that they are each other's destinies, whether they like it or not. Frustrated, Hongjo suggests that they try to go against their destiny rather than just accept it. On the drive back home, Hongjo falls asleep on Shinyu's shoulder, but while he tries to move her head, she compliments his smell while sleep-talking. He then gets flattered and lets her sleep peacefully. The following day at work, Shinyu puts on the same fragrance and summons Hongjo into his office. However, Hongjo, who had just returned from an investigation where blood was discovered in the shrine environment, comes rushing in, thinking it has something to do with it. When she arrives at his office, Shinyu begins another episode of his love confessions, this time emphasizing the fact that they're each other's destinies. She then leaves his office out of frustration. When she leaves, Shinyu remembers how Neon had gone out of her way to propose to him not too long after their breakup. He had then felt too guilty to turn her down, so he played along. Later that evening, Shinyu goes on a date with Neon. During the date, he sees a lady who looks exactly like Hongjo, so he decides to follow her. But after following her for a while, the lady vanishes out of sight. Meanwhile, Hongjo, who had spent her evening with the shaman, returns home and is shocked to see Shinyu's cat parked outside her apartment. When she confronts him, he bombards her with questions to know if she was the one he saw during his date. She then tells him it's impossible, as she had been with the shaman the whole time. At this point, Shinyu realizes that fate is definitely pulling some strings with him. He tells her sternly to stay away from his sight so he can focus on Neon and get happily married. Hearing this, Hongjo feels attacked, as she remembers how badly Neon treated her in high school. She then concludes that it'll be better if Shinyu marries her and discovers the kind of person she really is. The following day, Hongjo and her colleagues run into Shinyu in the elevator during lunchtime, putting her in an awkward mood. Surprisingly, despite what he said to her the previous night, Shinyu persuades Hongjo to have lunch with him. While they have lunch, Shinyu asks Hongjo why she's not attracted to him, and she accidentally admits that he's too tall and handsome for her, causing him to feel over the moon. She then casually brushes it off, telling him she has a new destiny now, and he lives on the first floor. After work that evening, Hongjo picks up some flowers, which she decides to plant in the garden at home as a housewarming gift for Jaegyong. While she plants them, Jae-kyung arrives from work and invites her into his apartment for a proper housewarming party. Excited, she immediately heads upstairs and cleans up before heading back downstairs to join him. Meanwhile, while Shinyu heads back home from work, he wonders what Hongjo could have meant about her new destiny living on the first floor. While Hongjo has dinner with Jae-kyung in his apartment, Shinyu calls her repeatedly to know how she's doing. When she eventually picks, he finds out that she's in a man's house, causing him to feel extremely heartbroken. The following day, during lunch period at work, he calls her repeatedly again, but she ignores his calls, so he gets into an even worse mood. After work, Shinyu heads into a bar and, for the first time, decides to drink alcohol. He ends up drinking so much, hoping that it helps him stop thinking so much, but things don't really get better. While he gets a driver to drive him back home, he remembers the things Hongjo said to him when she fell asleep on his shoulder the other night. While sleeping, she had accidentally told him about how her father had passed while trying to rescue some kids from drowning in the sea. Meanwhile, Hongjo, who seems excited about a bouquet she believes was sent by Jae-kyung to commemorate the previous night, goes through her phone and realizes that Shinyu hasn't really bothered her much all day. The doorbell suddenly rings, and when she answers it, she's shocked to see a drunk Shinyu standing outside her door. Worried, she checks up on him to see how he's doing. He then admits that even though he drank so much, he still can't keep her off his mind. Jae-kyung suddenly arrives and meets them in an awkward position. He introduces himself as the first-floor tenant of the apartment and asks why Shinyu is there. To keep matters from escalating, Hongjo decides to drive Shinyu back home, as he's too drunk to drive. During the drive, Shinyu starts to feel carsick, so he makes Hongjo stop the car. In a nearby playground, Hongjo tells Shinyu about a disaster nullification spell she found, which could probably cancel the love spell, but Shinyu interprets it as her calling him a disaster. He looks her dead in the eyes and asks her if she has never caught any feelings for him throughout the whole period. The effect of the alcohol then kicks in, causing him to do something dynamic as he leans in to kiss her. The following morning, Shinyu wakes up in his birthday suit, wondering what could have possibly gone down the previous night. The last thing he remembers was his attempt to kiss Hongjo, so he imagines random scenarios that he believes could have possibly led up to this moment. Hours later, when Hongjo gets down from a bus on her way to work, she is welcomed by Shinyu, who had obviously been waiting for her. Shinyu tries to find out what happened from Hongjo, but she refuses to answer and even goes ahead to tease him about his unruly behavior. In his office that morning, Shinyu brainstorms to try to remember what exactly happened, but his memory fails him completely. Later that day, Nayeon calls Hongjo out of the blue, asking to meet up. When they meet up, she apologizes for how badly she treated Hongjo back in high school and also for the loss of her father. Hongjo then accepts her apology. Meanwhile, Shinyu happens to pass by at that exact moment, so Nayeon makes him join them. She then officially introduces him as her boyfriend to Hongjo. Hongjo, now in an awkward position, is forced to excuse herself immediately. On her way back, she runs into Jae-kyung, who offers to have lunch together. Over lunch, he tries to find out what's going on between her and Shinyu, but Hongjo convinces him that it's nothing serious. She thanks him for the flowers he supposedly sent to her, but Jae-kyung reveals that he had nothing to do with them. He then instructs her to throw them away, unless she probably has feelings for the sender. Later at work that day, an angry civilian shows up and tries to harass Yoon-young and Hongjo, and even gets caught up in the crossfire. But before things can get out of hand, Gong shows up like a knight in shining armor and uses his martial arts skills to tackle the civilian to the ground. That night, Hongjo searches for her favorite pajamas, but realizes that they have suddenly gone missing. As soon as she gets tired of searching, Shinyu calls her to tell her he misses her. She then asks to confirm if he was the one who sent her flowers. To her surprise, he also claims to have no idea about them, leaving her puzzled. Shinyu, on the other hand, is still dying to find out what exactly happened after he blacked out that night, but he has no leads. The following day at work, Jae-kyung confronts Shinyu and tells him not to come by their house anymore, and Shinyu agrees. Shortly after, Shinyu is summoned into the mayor's office. When he gets there, he meets the mayor seated with Hyun-seo, the same client he helped with a law case before quitting his previous job. Apparently, Hyun-seo's company is being sued for going against some rules and regulations set in the city, and Shinyu is the one representing the city. Knowing Shinyu, Hyun-seo decides not to waste his time on a trial he would definitely lose, so he agrees to pay the huge settlement. Since the full moon is out that night, Hongjo and Shinyu prepare to carry out the disaster nullification spell. But before heading to the location, Hongjo recalls what happened the night Shinyu got drunk. Turns out he had passed out while trying to kiss her. She had then dragged him back into the car all by herself and driven him to his apartment. When they got there, Shinyu had drunkenly confessed that he didn't want to do the disaster nullification spell, as he thinks he's genuinely in love with her. When they arrive at the location, and Hongjo begins the procedure, Shinyu doodles around, trying to buy more time. As fate would have it, a lady shows up from nowhere, requesting their assistance in finding her lost dog. Shinyu then immediately hops on the opportunity, as he agrees to help. After searching through the woods, they find a creature that looks like a wolf, but it only takes them a particularly awkward position to figure out that it's the dog they're looking for. After returning the dog to its owner, Hongjo thanks Shinyu for all he did for her under the influence of the spell, telling him that even though he turned out to be a pain in the neck, he saved her from loneliness countless times. They both then finally lock into completing the spell. At the end of the spell, Hongjo writes a character that stands for disaster prevention on a red paper as required and hands it over to Shinyu to keep for 100 days. They then go their separate ways in the aftermath. Very early the following morning, Shinyu calls Hongjo to inform her that for the first time in forever, he didn't think of her all night and she celebrated with him. Later that morning, on her way to work, Jae-gyung offers her a ride, but she makes him drop her at a nearby supermarket, so people don't see them together and get the wrong idea. Shortly after he drops her off, Shinyu zooms past, accidentally splashing muddy water all over her clothes and ruining her mood. When she gets to the office, she runs into Naeon, who is currently contracted to work in the city hall for a short duration. Naeon extends her greetings and asks that Hongjo keep details about her father and boyfriend secret, as she doesn't want any special treatment. Hongjo then replies that as long as she doesn't blab about it herself, no one would know. Later that day, when Shinyu reviews the footage of Gong fighting the troublesome citizen, he points out that although the action could be ruled as self-defense, he would still most likely be fined for taking it overboard. He then notices the part where Hongjo got knocked over, and it suddenly feels like he has lost all the progress he made in moving on. On Hongjo's way home from work, she gets approached by the florist, who tries to force her to go on a date with him. Suddenly, Shinyu shows up and rescues her in the heat of the moment. While he drives her back home, Shinyu confesses that he still feels the same way towards her and that nothing has changed. She's then forced to get out of his car and take a bus for the rest of the way home. After she leaves, Shinyu decides to have a look at the red paper she handed him. Opening it, he then realizes why nothing's changed. Rather than the character for disaster prevention, Hongjo had accidentally written a similar character, which stands for flower. He then drives to her home to scold her for wasting their only shot to cancel the love spell. During the process, Jae-gyung arrives and asks Shinyu what he's still doing at their place after he clearly warned him not to stop by anymore. Shinyu then replies that he can't help it because he's in love with her. Hearing him say those words, Jae-gyung gets agitated. He calls him a two-timing bum, who can't even be faithful to his girlfriend. Hongjo, on the other hand, explains to Jae-gyung that there's a reason Shinyu is acting that way. She then proceeds to narrate the whole story about the love potion Shinyu had accidentally drunk in his place. As expected, Jae-gyung looks at them like they're crazy, as he doesn't believe in magic. To prove his point, he suggests that Hongjo try another spell from the book, but on the condition that if it doesn't work, they'd have to call off the whole unrealistic drama going on between them. Agreeing to it, Hongjo immediately rushes upstairs to select the right spell to prove the point. Knowing the spells left in the book, Shinyu is convinced that Hongjo might cast a seduction spell, but this time directly at Jae-gyung. He then gets on edge as he wonders what the outcome could be. While waiting anxiously, Jae-gyung and Shinyu come to an agreement that if it's proven that spells are real, Shinyu would leave Hongjo alone, but if proven otherwise, then Jae-gyung would have to stop meddling in their affairs. A few moments later, Hongjo calls to inform them about the completion of the spell. Both men then get into a meaningless competition, rushing upstairs to meet her. When they meet her, she reveals to them that she had chosen a fair skin enhancement spell. But since they don't notice the effects on her skin, Jae-gyung rules out the spellcasting as fake. Shinyu then leaves the building, wondering if he really caught the feelings for Hongjo without the effect of the spell. Later that night, Jae-gyung invites Hongjo to the rooftop, where they both have beer. Meanwhile, on Shinyu's way home, he sees the florist in the area, so he immediately calls Hongjo to alert her about him. Since Hongjo had briefly stepped away, Jae-gyung answers the phone for her and relays the message when she returns. The following day, Shinyu decides to see a doctor to find out if there's a medical term to describe what he has been feeling lately. The doctor then comes up with a term, neural coupling, which is a phenomenon that makes one's brain play tricks on them. Later that day at work, Shinyu finds out from Jae-gyung that Hongjo had told him about his medical condition, so he gets upset and summons her to the office rooftop. When she gets there, he lashes out at her for revealing his secret so easily. He then tells her about the medical term he just found out, stating that he wants to end things for good between them. For the fun of it, he calls her phone to know what she saved his number as, but ends up disappointed, as she had stored it as Groot. Coincidentally, Hongjo's colleagues had seen them together at the rooftop, so they assumed Hongjo was trying to hit on Shinyu just like she had hit on Jae-gyung. They then make fun of her about it for the rest of the day. On her way home from work that day, Hongjo gets touched inappropriately by the florist, putting her in a terrible mood. She's then convinced that the effect of the spell is real. When she gets home that night, she catches herself doodling and staring at Shinyu's spam messages, which somehow calms her down. The following morning, Shinyu finds out about the harassment case with the florist, so he heads over to his shop and handles things legally. Later that day at work, rumors eventually spread about Shinyu and Nayeon's relationship. As expected, people glaze them, making remarks about how perfect they look together, but it only ends up stressing Hongjo out. After work, Hongjo and her colleagues meet up for dinner at a restaurant, and for the first time, they treat her as an equal. Due to the amount of pressure Hongjo has been feeling lately, she drinks too much and ends up drunk. While she tries to find her way home, Shinyu shows up out of nowhere to help her, but she ends up spewing random words at him, blaming him for liking her when he has someone like Nayeon. Still drunk, she calls his phone on the spot to find out what he saved her number with as well. She then gets really disappointed when she finds out Shinyu had simply saved it as civil servant. She leaves immediately to catch a bus back home, but ends up falling asleep at the bus stop. Shinyu is then forced to intervene as he helps her catch the next bus. The following day, while Shinyu and Nayeon head to have breakfast with his parents, Shinyu's father suddenly announces that a date has already been decided for their wedding. Hearing this, Shinyu starts to feel down. A few moments later, Nayeon receives a text on her phone, changing her mood as she excuses herself. When Shinyu tries to find out what happened, she shows him pictures that were anonymously taken on the night he tried to kiss Hongjo on the playground. Rather than defending himself, Shinyu simply tells her he got swayed, leading her to believe that something actually happened between them. Overcome by rage, Nayeon meets up with Hongjo that night and slaps her before accusing her of being a home wrecker. She likens it back to the time in high school when she got involved with her man as well. Before taking her leave, she tells Hongjo not to get ahead of herself, as she can never amount to anything. She then heads straight to Hyunseo's house and starts getting freaky with him. Overwhelmed, Hongjo calls Shinyu that night, asking to meet up. When he arrives, she hands over the wooden box, telling him about how his girlfriend had slapped her. She then lashes out at him once more, but this time, Shinyu doesn't flinch. Instead, he pulls her in and kisses her on the spot. When Shinyu kisses her, Hongjo immediately snaps out and pushes him away. She then asks him to take the box and stop bothering her as she leaves. That night, while Shinyu thinks about what he did, he remembers how Nayeon had made him promise to end things completely with Hongjo after she found out. Hongjo, on the other hand, blames herself for not slapping him as soon as he kissed her. She equally blames herself for letting Nayeon go scotangent-free after messing with her like that, so she decides to take action. Early the following morning, before work, she meets up with Nayeon in a coffee shop and tries to retaliate, but decides to hold herself back. She then decides to take a different action as she tells her the whole truth about the spell. Later at work that day, Shinyu texts Hongjo, asking her to meet him at the rooftop, but she decides that she'll be meeting him in his office instead. When she gets there, Shinyu tries to talk about what happened the previous night, but Hongjo brushes it away casually, telling him it was nothing. She makes it clear to him that she has finally come clean about the spell with Nayeon, telling him she'd appreciate it if he stopped calling or texting her. She then seeks his professional advice about a legal case and asks him to send the feedback directly to her email as she leaves. On her way out, she runs into Jae-gyung, who helps brighten up her mood. Shinyu still can't get over the fact that they were being stalked, so he reports the case. On her way home from work, while Hongjo waits for the bus, Jae-gyung shows up and picks her up. On the drive back home, he asks her to be his date in a forthcoming hangout, and she agrees to it. The following morning, while Shinyu tries to return the wooden box to the shaman, she tells him about a new method he can use to nullify the spell's effect. Following the shaman's instructions, he meets up with Hongjo, and together, they head to the demolished shrine to bury the box exactly where it was found. While climbing the mountain, Hongjo trips and drops the box, revealing a different spellbook for curses hidden in a different compartment of the box. Still, they decide to carry on with their mission. Getting to the area, Shinyu experiences a hard time trying to figure out the exact spot he dug out the box. All of a sudden, they get terrified as they see a doll hanging from a tree, wearing the same pajamas Hongjo has been looking for. Worst yet, it has Shinyu's name written boldly on it, with a knife to its heart. Immediately, they called the police to report the case. Hongjo believes it's a curse, but Shinyu has lost his faith in the supernatural, so he tells her that curses are not real. On the drive back home, Shinyu stops by a store, where he purchases some pepper spray and a stun gun for Hongjo because someone is clearly stalking her. When he takes her back home, he suggests spending the night over at her place to make her feel safe, but she assures him that she's fine as she genuinely thanks him for looking after her. Before he leaves, he asks her to go on a date with him the following day, and she agrees to it. Early the following morning, Shinyu picks her up and takes her to a fancy restaurant, but he notices how frightened Hongjo is as she keeps looking around for stalkers. He then devotes the rest of the date to doing things that'll help her feel relaxed, even if it means facing his biggest fears. After the date, Shinyu confesses his feelings to Hongjo one more time, but this time, she turns him down politely, stating that she'd appreciate it if they simply returned to being work colleagues. After dropping her off that night, Shinyu decides to stick around for a bit to check the environment for stalkers. Shortly after, Jae-gyong, who had been away on a business trip, arrives and meets Shinyu outside the house. When he confronts him, Shinyu narrates the whole experience with the stalker, asking for Jae-gyong's permission to set up a CCTV camera in the house. To his surprise, Jae-gyong voices out against the idea, making him suspicious. Leaving the area, Shinyu heads straight to the florist's shop to carry out some investigations. Given that the florist has been bothering Hongjo for a while, he deems him the #1 suspect. When he gets there, he sees the shop locked, but before he gets to leave, the florist shows up, looking really angry. The following day, Hongjo finds out that Shinyu had taken sick leave from work. She then gets worried, as something like that has never happened before. Later that day at work, Hongjo's team is tasked with planning a very big festival coming up soon. When she gets off work that evening, Hongjo heads to the festival scene to inspect the area and make reports. But as soon as she begins her inspection, the power goes off. She tries to reach out to the guard who escorted her in, but can't seem to find him. A strange number then calls her phone, but as soon as she picks up, the call drops. She then realizes at that moment that what's happening probably isn't a coincidence. Terrified, she tries to make her way out in the dark, but trips. Someone then begins to approach her from the shadows. Will they be able to break the curse? Comment, sweet plot if you'd like part 2 of this series. As usual, thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.